Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to another episode of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I got Jack McCurry rolling with us, but tonight we actually have another guest with us who is a proud member of Brown's Twitter and a good friend. He is LA Andy. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing good, man. What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. You know, we were in with you and along with Alex Hale in that big Zoom chat with a bunch of Browns fans, and that was a lot of fun. And while we were in there, we're like, you know, let's just continue this on over here on the podcast. So we're glad that you decided to join us over here to talk about the Browns in the first round and what they did.
No, it's my pleasure, man. And you guys know me. I'm a huge Cleveland sports fan. Love my Brownies. I follow just as much as anyone. I had fun tonight with the draft party, the Zoom draft party. Thanks again for you guys for coming out and hanging with us. Jack, you were there the entire time, pretty much, my dude. So thank you so much, man. You too, Anthony. You guys hung pretty much for the whole time. And we just kind of took the party over here now. So let's do it. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, let's start at the top of the draft because, the beginning is always a good place to start. And it started with the Cincinnati Bengals, to no surprise at all, taking Joe Burrow as the number one overall pick to be the potential franchise quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. And Jack, we kind of expected this for a long time, ever since they won the national championship at LSU. There were many ways that the Bengals could screw this up and, be the Bengals of old, but they actually seem to stick with their plan and get this thing right.
Yeah, definitely. I think you could see that, they were essentially done with Andy Dalton. They wanted to move forward. They wanted a new quarterback, and they did just that. I mean, Burrow has taken a meteoric rise in the last year. We were talking about it in the party like a year ago. He was pretty much an undrafted talent for the 2020 draft. Yeah, and I mean, he had a fantastic year, won a national title, won the Heisman, put up gaudy numbers I don't think could ever be duplicated.
70 touchdowns?
It was something astronomical. But, yeah, you hope that Cincinnati does right by him, builds around him. I mean, they have great weapons around him. They need to improve the offensive line, improve that defense. But, Burrow's a good talent. Now, like I said in the chat, we're going to see how good of a coach Zach Taylor is because, I mean, he's coming from the Sean McVay tree. But, yeah, I mean, good pick. I mean, this is obviously the chalk pick for months, so it all came to fruition.
Yeah,
definitely no surprises here. Yeah, no, I mean, just kind of reiterating what Jack said. I mean, no surprise here, number one. I think my mother, who hasn't probably watched a football game in 5 years, could have picked Joe Burrow to the Bengals. But it is kind of wild that where we were with Joe Burrow a year and a half ago, and here we are now, number one pick overall, and the rest is history.
Yeah, the cupboard isn't bare over there in Cincinnati in terms of offensive weapons. He's got Joe Mixon, he's got Tyler Boyd. They have A.J. Green returning from injury potentially. John Ross, who they drafted in the first round back in 2017, has been kind of a struggle and kind of a letdown since they picked him. But there's a lot of talent on that offensive side of football. The key problem, though, is they don't have a good offensive line. And we found here in Cleveland that because when you have a bad offensive line and a young quarterback, that's a huge recipe for disaster. So while they had some good pieces around them, in terms of skill positions, they need to find a solution with the offensive line, and I would think that's where they'll probably start to go with day two.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted Jonah Williams high last year. He was injured all year. They tried Cordy Glenn. That didn't pan out. They drafted Billy Price a couple years ago. Hasn't panned out yet. But you're looking, going into tomorrow, Josh Jones is there at the top of the second round. Ezra Cleveland. Yeah, yep. Lucas Niang. I mean, there's options there for him. So I would think, they have to boost the offensive line. Definitely right tackle, maybe left tackle, just to make sure if Jonah Williams doesn't stay healthy that they have some insurance there. But, yeah, like here in Cleveland, I mean, you can have all the weapons in the world, but if you don't have a line to protect your quarterback, there's no hope for success.
Yeah, the cupboard ain't bare over there. Hopefully that Johnny Williams is able to come back and help Joe Burrow out, protecting him, and hopefully here in day 2 they're able to find some offensive linemen in order to boost the O-line in front of Joe Burrow to protect the asset that they just took at number 1. Much to our chagrin, the Baltimore Ravens took Patrick Queen at linebacker from LSU, and there have been so many Ravens defensive players over the years that we just cannot stand, and I have a very bad feeling that this is not going to pan out well when we play them twice a year, because whoever they put in their defensive system over there just tends to excel, and there's no reason to believe that Patrick Queen can't do the same thing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, over the years, you look at these Ravens defensive players that have been a thorn in our side. Ray Lewis, Haloti Ngata, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, and now the new ones. They acquired Calais Campbell. They have Marlon Humphrey. They have Matt Judon. They have Earl Thomas, Marcus Peters. And now they're adding Patrick Queen to the mix. It's that Ravens defense.
Sick.
Yeah, and they added Derek Wolfe in free agency. They are so talented. You can't. As much as we hate to say it, they're the front runner in the AFC North right now.
With flying colors.
And Queen was right, and Queen was obviously a pick that a lot of people slated for months, much like Burrow to Cincinnati. So obviously a great pick. Like Anthony said, they plug in guys on that defensive side of the ball, and they're always instant impact.
I love Patrick Queen's one of my favorite players in this draft, to be honest, because just based off the need at linebacker for the Browns. But it was a pipe dream that he would slip to 41, obviously. But gosh, I did not want him to end up in Baltimore. Of all the places. Man. The rich get richer.
They're Pittsburgh, right? They always seem to get those fantastic defensive players. Always, and they're always a thorn in our side. So, go ahead.
Even the T.J. Watt draft, even though I know a lot of people had a lot of edge guys ahead of T.J. in that draft, but I really liked T.J. Watt that draft. I did, and sure as shit, there he goes, slipping right to the Steelers like clockwork.
Yep, and the thing about the Steelers is they're always able to sit for a little bit and learn behind the guys that are there, and they just replace them year after year after year after year, and it's beyond frustrating. But they always do it so right, and that's the model that we want to kind of have here, and hopefully with this new regime we can start to get to that point. Speaking of the Steelers, they didn't have a first-round pick tonight because they traded their first-round pick back during the season to acquire Minkah Fitzpatrick from the Miami Dolphins, so they did not have a pick. But that's another player that they acquired who is going to pay so much dividends for them as they move forward on that defense. It's just another guy that is a thorn in our side, and he does so much for that defense and kind of revitalized their season a little bit when he was traded to there last year. So I would say that was a good move for them, and the Dolphins ended up with 3 first-round picks this year, and they did a good job kind of rebuilding what they needed to. And I guess now we kind of gone through the whole AFC North except for the Cleveland Browns, and we figured at some point that they were going to go offensive tackle. 9 times out of 10, or maybe even 99 times out of 100, I could not believe that Jedrick Wills fell to the Browns today. I was very shocked by the Giants going Andrew Thomas at 4, and then Arizona going Isaiah Simmons at 7. Those were certainly 2 places that could use an offensive tackle. So I was very surprised that we actually ended up with Jedrick Wills. And the thing with Wills is that, he played majority of his snaps at right tackle, but because Tua was a left-handed quarterback, he was actually protecting his blind side. So Wills should be able to transition to the left tackle. I know Andrew Berry already talked about it in their conference call after they made the pick, that he's going to transition to left tackle. But, Jack, getting a tackle at 10 and avoiding trading for Trent Williams, I think was the best case scenario, whether it was Jedrick Wills or Andrew Thomas or whatever one they had highly rated on their board.
Absolutely. The talk with Trent Williams, you would have to give up draft capital to get him, and then turn around and pay him. And this is a guy that hasn't played a full season in 6 or 7 years.
Preach it, Jackie Mack. Preach it, baby.
Yeah.
Preach
I mean, you would have to pay him top left tackle money. It just didn't make sense for us to do that. And I mean, like, and Washington's now in a hole because they said, like, it's going to be hard to trade him at this point. So it's like, it's the Redskins being the Redskins. But
like, what are you thinking coming out publicly and saying that? Like, you are releasing any leverage you have, which you didn't have. You've already eliminated all the leverage you've had over the last couple of years, and now you've just completely buried it 6 feet under.
Exactly. But, I mean, with Wills, yeah, like, there was some mock drafts that had him coming to 10, but, you know, the talk the last couple of days was that he would be the pick at 4. I mean, we were in the party or in the chat when Andrew Thomas was the pick, and I was upset. A lot of us were shocked that ended up being the pick. But to get Wills and then to hear, you know, Barry and DePodesta say that was the best player on the board, it fills the need at left tackle. Yeah, he did play strictly right tackle, but he also talked about the mentality of protecting Tua Tagovailoa's blindside in Alabama as the right tackle. He said that mentality is going to carry forward to the NFL, and he's already been working to transition to the left side. You know, Joe Thomas has reached out, he said, and I feel like Joe might work with him and help him transition. You know, Joe's been good with our offensive linemen, whether he was a player or since he's been retired. I think this is a good fit. And I think the Browns, you know, they stayed patient and obviously got the guy they wanted. And now we can move forward. Our offensive line is solidified now. And now it's make or break for Baker Mayfield going into 2020.
Ain't it ever? It is. And, you know, and to what Barry said, you know, in Depot, actually, I think it was Depot, or both might have said it. But the fact that they literally came out and said after the draft that Wills was their top tackle on their board. Not just on the board at the current time, but like since the process started, that Wills was their top tackle and that they were elated to get him at 10. And we all reacted in the draft chat because as soon as the Browns went on the clock, can you guys recall a pick being turned in any quicker than what the Browns did today?
Never a Browns pick. I actually get turned in that
I
quick.
gotta go back and watch it. I recorded. I gotta go back. I swear it was like 10 seconds. I want an official time on when that flipped to the pick is in because it felt like 10, 20 seconds.
I mean, I know they were on the clock already for like 5 or 6 minutes because, you know, the TV delay and getting them to announce the picks or whatever. But, yeah, it was quick compared to some of the other teams in the first round.
And even traditionally, how fast, I mean, not that I keep track of how long it takes to get a pick in, but, like, usually they eat up a decent amount of the clock or at least half of it. Holy smokes, they got it in like, boom. I thought it was funny when it happened at the time. We were all like, holy crap, it's already in.
Yeah, because like I remember like looking and I was like, guys, the pick's in, and everybody's like, what?
What? How? What do you mean?
You know, they did say that they did have some offers for that 10th pick, but ultimately they decided to go in the direction of Jedrick Wills. Jack, what do you think it would have taken for somebody to pry that pick away from him?
I mean, they would have had to take several day 2 picks, maybe even a future, you know, number 1 or something. It's like Andrew Berry said, they did not, or no, it wasn't even Andrew Berry. It was Lane Atkins of the Orange and Brown Report tweeted that they never was in all capital letters expected Wills to be there. And I think the fact that he did get there and like the pick was so quick to turn in, I think once they seen that he was going to be there, I think they all agreed that Wills would be the pick.
Well, where do we go from here now? Because now, you know, they theoretically solve the problem at left tackle, and you don't really have to worry about that for now. The offensive line is pretty much set. Now I think you could really focus in on adding some defensive talent, especially in some of the holes that they patched over.
Yes, please.
And free agency. So, Andy, where do you want to go here in day 2 and day 3?
Okay, I know that safety to me, I just feel in today's NFL, You can never have enough defensive backs. And as it stands right now, safety is thin as can be. I know that they got Sendejo and they got Carl Joseph, both fine players, but I think they're stopgaps. At least Sendejo, I feel, is a stopgap. Carl Joseph, maybe you re-sign him to a new deal afterwards. I don't know. It all depends how they're going to play. But who do you have behind them? You have nobody. And honestly, I feel like you can upgrade on Sendejo. I really do. I think guys, can we just talk about how no safeties went in the first round? 0. Xavier McKinney is still on the board. Grant Delpit is still on the board. I would take any of those crop of safeties from McKinney to Delpit to Winfield Jr. to I love Jeremy Chin. I mean, I'm open for safety. If they don't go safety, I think one position that some people are talking about, but not enough Browns fans want to admit that we need depth in, and that's defensive tackle. There's really not a lot of depth there. I like the Billings signing. I think that's one that's going to go that went under the radar a little bit. That was a really good signing. But as far as the second round goes, I think I think safety is the lock-in pick here. They could go defensive tackle. They could go linebacker maybe. I don't see linebacker in the second. I feel linebacker will be more of the third round. But as it stands right now, give me one of these safeties because, gosh darn it, they're all on the board still.
Yeah, looking at the board, Xavier McKinney, Grant Delpit, Antoine Whitfield Jr., Jeremy Chin, Ashton Davis, Kyle Dugar are all second round graded by the Draft Network, and all those guys are still available to be picked. So, and the Browns pick 9th tomorrow. So,
I can't wait, man.
There's certainly one of those safeties to be had if that's the direction it could go. I think receiver is another possibility. There's a lot of receivers in the second, third round range. I think that would fit this offense very well. You still have Odell and Landry recovering from surgery. They haven't re-signed Higgins, so there's really not like a sure thing right now in terms of receiver. I know we expect those guys to be healthy, but
sure,
there's certainly an opportunity to add a receiver behind those guys just in case. Edge is something else that I'm really paying attention to. You still have AJ Epineza,
from Iowa, right?
Yeah, from Iowa, right? Zach Bond, Julian Okora, and Curtis Weaver. Those are all guys that can go in the second round, early third. So I think Edge, and Jack knows my feeling about pass rushers. I told him it should be a T-shirt by now.
We can never have enough.
Exactly. We can never have enough pass rushers. So those are certainly two positions three positions that I would certainly hone in at the 41st pick.
Yeah, I think, you guys both hit it on the nail on the head. Safety is an option there. Defensive tackle, Andy, I'm dead with you. Richardson's not here long-term. Ogunjobi's not here long-term. Billings was a one-year deal.
Ogunjobi did not play very well last year. A lot of Browns fans don't want to admit that, but he did not play well last year.
No, he didn't. And he's in the contract year this year, too, so you might be able to squeeze a little bit more out of him. But
right. He'll be motivated because...
Sure.
But yeah, everybody loves Ogunjobi because, he looks like a Greek god at the defensive tackle position. But honestly, the last 2 years he's struggled, and Pro Football Focus will back that up. So yeah, Blacklock, Matabuke, Jordan Elliott, Melvin Gallimore, those guys are there. Andy pretty much talked about the safeties. Those are options. I'm with you, Andy. I don't think linebacker would be an option at 41. Maybe they move up from 74 if a guy like Logan Wilson falls down a little bit. Willie Gay Jr. is another guy in mind there at pick 74. I know there's the off the field issues.
Red flag some.
Yeah. But in wide receiver, I think you can wait until 74 or 97 or even 115. The receiver class is deep. They can get a guy any one of those spots potentially. But Michael Pittman Jr. has been the guy that a lot of people have been talking up over the last couple of weeks. So, I mean, if they're high on him at 41, maybe you might have to pull the trigger there, but it just depends on how they value receiver at this point over a safety or a defensive tackle.
I actually have a question for both of you since you both brought up wide receiver because, like I said, I don't watch tape or anything, but I do. I mean, guys, I listen to your podcast a lot. I listen to tons of podcasts, and I read a lot. But wide receiver is the one I've really focused on offensive tackle and defensive players in this draft to read up on. I haven't really done enough on wide receiver. I guess my question, you guys, is what type of wide receiver should the Browns be looking for body wise? Are we looking for another guy on the outside to slide Jarvis in? Are we looking for a slot guy to keep Jarvis on the outside and move Jarvis all around? And not to mention in Stefanski's offense, there's going to be 3 wide receiver sets, but not as much in the past, obviously, not nowhere near as much. But what kind of wide receivers are we looking for?
For me, if I'm looking at a wide receiver, at least in Stefanski's office, I want somebody that runs crisp routes, somebody that's going to give you an edge in a play-action game, because that is one thing with Stefanski that you're going to see a lot more of than in the past. Those two things, at least to me, are the main things that I'm looking for. And there's a guy... It's kind of funny who they compare him to, but there's a guy from Florida, Van Jefferson, who's a solid route runner, who's a good run blocker, and they compare him to Rashard Higgins, which is, I think, a fascinating combination.
To Higgins?
Yeah, they compare him to Higgins. And, if they're able to get that kind of solid route runner and a guy who's willing to get his hands dirty in the run blocking game, I think that's going to go a long way in this offense.
Speaking of Higgins, what's the story with him? Like, do they just have no intention of bringing him back? I'm a little lost on that one. I'm a little lost on that whole last season with Higgins. I don't know what the hell that was, and it's not even really the guy. It was just a bizarre year for Hollywood last year.
It's truly fascinating, and he's still tweeting like he's still a member of the Browns. Like, he tweeted reaction to them drafting Jedrick Wills. I mean, he loves the uniforms. Like. Yeah, last season was bizarre. I mean, he didn't want to go in during the Seattle game. Yeah. I mean, clearly, Dorsey and them did not offer him an extension of some sort. Maybe he thought he was more than he's worth, and he still feels that way. I mean, maybe the Browns just don't want to bring him back, but they do need to address receiver. I'm glad Anthony brought up Van Jefferson. They've said he's the best route runner in the class. You could probably get him at 97 or 115. KJ Hamler is a guy that I love. I know he underachieved at Penn State, but the talent's there. I mean, he just you got to get it out of him, and I feel like our coaching staff can easily do that, especially the receiver coach we brought in from New England. But I mean, there's options here. Obviously, like I mentioned, Michael Pittman. I don't know that they'd go at 41, but honestly, we got a lot of small guys. I'd love a big body. I mean, we got Antonio Gandy-Golden from Liberty.
Kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, Colin Johnson from Texas, which is Anthony's favorite. Donovan Peoples-Jones from Michigan wouldn't be a bad option. I mean, there's options there for big bodies. But
I got another good one for you. He's kind of a guy who can do multiple things, and he's 6'4", 230. That is Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame. They use him all over the place at Notre Dame. Receiver, blocking, kind of nasty in the run game. So that's certainly a guy who they can move around the field with Austin Hooper and kind of have him in a wide receiver / tight end hybrid role. I think that would be a really good fit for this offense as well.
Yeah, and
where have you guys seen? Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Tyler Johnson's another name. I know that that name's been floated around in the Browns podcast community a lot, and I think that's a guy that'll definitely could be there in the 4th round. He's also another solid route runner, which I feel like they really need in this kind of offense.
I'm a Buckeye hunk. Where do you guys come up? He's not your big-bodied wide receiver, but he's got good hands, and he seems to me, for someone with a naked eye, to run good routes. What do you guys think about KJ Hill?
I like KJ Hill. I don't know how much they do, but it's just another guy who isn't going to like blow you away, but he's going to be solid, and that kind of fits the mold, I think, of what they want to do. You want a solid, consistent guy. They already have a flashy guy in Odell. You have a solid guy in Jarvis Landry. I just want a solid guy who's going to run good routes. He's going to run block to kind of help sell the play action, and just a guy who's going to get his hands dirty. I think that they asked Antonio Callaway to do some of those things last year and the year before, and it just didn't work out. And Higgins is pretty decent at doing that, but if they're going to run the ball quite a bit, they're not going to ask Odell to block a lot, I don't think. I know that he's certainly capable of doing it, but you don't want.
He actually is.
You don't always want your star receivers to run at them and whatnot. So you want guys out there that are going to get their hands dirty. They're going to run block and whatnot. So I think Hill might be another solid option. Like I said, he's not anything special, but I think he'll be pretty consistent if it's somebody they want to bring in.
Would it be safe to call him like a poor man's Michael Thomas? I mean, like,
that's kind of what I was.
Yeah, decent route runner, doesn't do anything spectacular.
You nailed it. Thank you, Jackie. Because if you guys remember, the whole league slept on Michael Thomas. Now, I'm not saying that KJ Hill is Michael Thomas. He's not even the same size. Right. Michael Thomas is much taller, I believe. I think. Yeah. KJ Hill's not that. Isn't KJ Hill only like 6'1" or 6'2"? He's not very tall. He's only like 6'1".
Brugler's draft guide has him at 5'11" and 7'8".
5'11", 6'1". Jeez, that was way off. So yeah, he's a shorter receiver, But it's just the way that the people slept on Thomas. I feel like that's kind of happening it feels the same with KJ Hill. Now I don't know if it is. I don't think it's going to be the same result, obviously, but at least not to that extreme of talent. Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver in the NFL for my money. But it just reminds me of that. It really does. This whole process with KJ Hill, because everybody seems like, he's pretty good. He's good, but it's very lukewarm with him. And again, it reminds me exactly how everybody was with Michael Thomas.
If I had my preference though of Buckeye wide receivers, and especially for value, Benjamin Victor is the route I'm going to go. Victor, that dude can catch just about anything. 6'4",
and he's the big body that you were talking about too. He's 6'4",
absolutely.
2 pounds. Big dude, man. He's going. He's kind of hard to project. I don't. On all these mock draft simulators that I do 5 times a day. Shout out to Stephen Thomas, aka Brown's mock draft, for getting me addicted to these damn things. But I was taking him in the 6th round a lot. Victor, I don't know where he ends up.
Yeah, I think that's about where he'll end up. Is somewhere in there? Yeah. Because there's no way he's going to last to the 7th round pick that the Browns have. So I think somewhere in that 6th round range is about where he's going to go. Well, before we get on out of here, to kind of look at the rest of the draft as a whole, is there any one surprise from both of you that you saw in the first round of the draft? You're like, really? They went there? So I'll start with you, Andy.
Honestly, I the Las Vegas Raiders, Henry Ruggs III, I love the guy. What have I been doing? Did anyone expect him to go ahead of Judy? Anyone? Any of you guys?
No, but he's certainly going to blow you. He's going to blow you away in terms of speed.
He is,
and that always seems to be their play style. Make Al Davis proud with all the speed guys, and he's certainly going to run past everybody, and maybe that's what they're looking to do.
Yeah, that pick. I mean, when it happened, I was like, huh? I mean, I know he's a first round talent, but it's just I didn't expect him to be the first wide receiver on the board, and then the Raiders came back at 19, took another good player, Damon Arnett out of Ohio State, who was a good player, but again, I didn't think he'd go that high. I really didn't. And there was one more. I can't think of the top of my head. I'll think of it. What do you got, Jack?
The one that everybody's talking about, Green Bay taking Jordan Love. I mean,
yeah.
They haven't taken, like Aaron Rodgers had said, they hadn't taken an offensive playmaker in a long time in the first round. Rodgers even said, if they want to play him for the future, that's fine, but he ain't going to beat me anytime soon. And obviously, Rodgers' contract prohibits them from even moving on for at least 2 more seasons. So that was fascinating because I thought, Green Bay could go defense. They could get another wide receiver opposite Devontae Adams, and they decided to pull the trigger on Jordan Love, who, was getting some praise from some of the draft gurus, but I did not think Green Bay would actually take a quarterback.
Yeah, that one really threw me off. I thought there were some other teams that could take one. Obviously New England, we thought might take one in the first round. Jacksonville was certainly a possibility, depending how things played out, because you never know what's going to go on there with Gardner Minshew. But, if things don't pan out, they could have their pick of Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields next year in next year's draft. So it's a very interesting pick for Green Bay at that spot. And, did they really have to trade up? Like, who behind them at where they were picking would have jumped them to go and grab Jordan Love? There had to be somebody else that was trying to move up that Green Bay felt threatened by in order to make that move to trade up a few spots to go and grab him.
My sense is that maybe Indy or looking at the board, maybe Carolina. Or Jacksonville, hypothetically. They're at pick 42, so they didn't have a long way to go. But like everybody's looking, it says Seattle, Baltimore, and Tennessee weren't taking them. No, but there's teams behind them that were looking probably.
How about the Bears at 43?
That's possible because their GM had said a couple of days ago that they could take a quarterback depending on where he falls on their board. So. There's a lot of quarterbacks available tomorrow, so it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out because Jalen Hurts is there, Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason. I would expect all 3 of those to go off the board sometime tomorrow.
And with Joe Burrow now in Cincinnati, you have to figure Andy Dalton's days. I know he's still under contract for 1 more year, but I would tend to think at some point they're going to release him and move on. I don't know if they're going to find a trade partner for him or not, but I'm curious to see where he's going to end up on a quarterback carousel because you still got Jameis Winston, who's a free agent. You still have Cam Newton, who's a free agent. I would tend to think one of those 3 guys would be a possibility for the Patriots. But other than
Dalton.
That,
Dalton in New England.
There really isn't another team out there right now that desperately needs one unless LA wants to use one of those guys for a year and let Herbert sit. I know they have Tyrod Taylor, but we saw how that experiment worked out here. So maybe Herbert starts day 1 there. I don't know. It's certainly a lot of fun, and this first round of draft was extremely positive for the Browns. It's nice to not really stress over it for once. We can almost all say that they got the pick right at 10. I think any kind of left tackle was a good selection, and hopefully moving on day 2, day 3 this weekend, they can continue to build what they have this offseason with the new regime and everything. And before we get on out of here, Andy, you have any final thoughts about the first round? And then after that, if you want to go ahead and plug all your podcast stuff and what you do.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks, man. No, I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised they stayed at 10. Well, I'm not surprised they stayed at 10. I'm surprised how the board fell. I wasn't even thinking Wills really to the Browns this whole process when I guess we all should have been. I mean, I really like Dane Brugler, and he hasn't wavered since December. I mean, Wills was his number 1 tackle on his board. The way the board fell, I think it's going to work out because I really, at the end of the day, did want them to get one of these 4. If they loved one of these 4 tackles, I don't care who it was. But if they were there at 10, I wanted them to take them, and they did that. And I think it was the best decision because at the end of the day, we all know that offensive line was just a carousel at times last year on both at both tackles, at the right guard. It was a glutton for punishment. So with that being said, I'm just glad that the board fell the way it did, and they stuck to their board, and they didn't trade down. And one of those four tackles, their favorite on the board was there, and they just stood there and took them and turned in the card. It was the best decision they could have made.
Yeah, they didn't overthink it, which is a lot.
Correct.
Which
Exactly.
is something that has happened a lot in the past.
God. Oh, man.
That's for damn sure. All right, Andy, you want to plug your podcast?
Oh yeah, well, you guys
can find you.
You can find me on. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Land of the Cleaves. That's CLEVES, just like Cleveland. You can find me on Twitch as well. I stream on Twitch all the time. Land of the Cleaves as well on Twitch. I also have a horror podcast. We just recently joined a podcast network this week, so we're really excited about that. We joined the Slash and Cast podcast network. Name of our podcast is Dead in Santa Carla. We talk about horror movies. I'm a huge Cleveland sports fan, but my other big hobby is movies, and especially horror. So if you like horror, definitely check out my podcast, Dead in Santa Carla. It's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a fan of horror movies, but there are a lot of people that are. So I really recommend checking out. Andy.
We're junkies, man. We're pretty sick people. Like we're almost cult like. Yeah, we're kind of funny, man. Horror fans are funny. The horror community is a great community, man. It's hilarious.
You know, there's times I could barely stand watching you play that game on Twitch. The
Friday the 13th or Dead by Daylight? Dead by Daylight or Friday?
Dead by Daylight. Because when shit pops out, I jump. So,
yeah, I also stream a lot of horror games on Twitch. I mix it up on Twitch, but I kind of started out on Twitch. I've been streaming on Twitch for 2 years. We built that community and the channel from the ground up. I mostly stream. I started off streaming a lot of horror games. I still do, but I mixed in some stuff. You know, I was just playing MLB The Show 20 the other night. I was playing Uncharted, which is a adventure story game. You know, stuff like that. So I mix it up as much as I can, but I definitely do like to play a lot of horror games as well.
I will say when somebody donates $6.66, it is the best. Like 10
the scare alert. The scare alerts. Yeah, the scare alerts are great. We have a good time, man. Yeah, we have a good time in my streams on Twitch. We really built a good community, and we all talk in our Discord, and Twitch is a funny place. But I've enjoyed the ride on Twitch. It's been 2 years. March of 2018 is when I started streaming on Twitch, so a little over 2 years now. I've enjoyed the ride, man. We're almost at 3,000 followers. You know,
fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good time, man. The community gets all the credit. I don't, you know, look, man. I always tell them like that's the thing with Twitch. Communities are the backbone. The viewers are the backbone of Twitch, and you know, and I appreciate them, and they know that, and it's a blast though. I enjoy it very much.
Well, we're extremely glad that you're able to join us on a podcast for the first time. We've almost done 200 of these episodes, and
thanks for having me, guys.
I know how big of a Browns fan you are, and
I'm hardcore.
Thank you for being a co-host of that draft party earlier. That was so much fun, and we might have to do some more of that this weekend because that was a good time with a bunch of good people.
Yeah,
so
if anybody wants to do that, man, I don't know if I can co-host another one, but if anybody else wants to do a Zoom party tomorrow, I'll join.
Yeah, absolutely. That was
that really was. That's you know, and I think I said it I don't think I said it. I know I said it several times, but I'll say it again. I really always wanted to do something like that with Brown's Twitter, something interactive. During an event, and what better event? Browns fans, what do we love more than anything that we've ever had to glom onto the last 20 years, and that's the draft. You know, so to kind of get a big group of Twitter, of Browns Twitter, and people that I've followed for going on 7 years now on Twitter, and to kind of finally hear some of those voices for the first time, some seeing their face for the first time. It was really cool just to kind of bring everyone together, especially with everything going on in the world with COVID. And I hope everyone's safe out there. Stay safe, you and yours. And I think it was a perfect time to do it during this crisis. And we all just got together and had fun, man. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. it's kind of like our Super Bowl every year, so it's nice to.
Yeah, it is, man.
One of these years, we're going to still be celebrating our Super Bowl when the draft comes around, and that'll just be a good old fun time. Jack, you got anything?
No, just keep it locked on the podcast all weekend. We're going to have tons of draft coverage as well as the dogland.com.
Yeah, we did a lot of crap today, and this
we did
as well. So
you guys are animals, man. That's why I joked, because we had all 4 different groups of podcasters roll through, and writers and everything. And it's like I told you guys, man. You guys are like doing the Cleveland podcast car wash around here. It's kind of felt that way, for God. It's been a lot. Hey, man, draft day. It's an exciting day. I'm glad you guys. Thanks for having me on, guys. This was a lot of fun, man.
Absolutely,
and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, anytime, boys. Anytime.
As always, you guys can follow Andy on Twitter at Lando Cleves. Follow Jack on Twitter at Jack McCurry08. Follow me on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. Be sure to follow the Dogland on Twitter as well. We're going to continue to pump out content all weekend long, and in the next week as well. So we've just been hard at work, and we're glad that you guys actually listen to us and read us and follow along on the website. So with all that, we're going to get on and out of here. And the most important thing, especially after a good night for the draft for the Browns, is go Browns.